Hello, welcome back to Formscan, the IrishRacing.com show where we take racing experts' predictions for the weekend and go over the form on the IrishRacing.com website so you have all the stats and all the insight that you need to place the best bets this weekend. Joining me today, as ever, we have Stephen Harris from Betting Expert and Ed Quigley. Chaps, the flat is back. So we're going to be looking at some of the top races at Doncaster this week. But Ed, you're still going to hang on to some of the jumps as well.
Yeah, you're spot on, Joe. The flat is back officially. I mean, it never seems to go away, does it, these days with all the all-weather action? But yeah, Doncaster Town Moor, really competitive action, good prize money, big fields, and some pretty deep ground I think we'll probably get by the time they go to post. I mean, at the time we're recording on Friday, soft, heavy in places. It's going to take a lot of getting. It's really going to test the fitness of a lot of these horses reappearing for their first run of the season. And I said, I'm also going to be keeping my eye on the jumps. I mean, we can't pass away the jump season yet, can we, Joe? We're not even had entry yet, for goodness sake. So I've got my eyes on Utoxter, which will be run on bottomless ground. Got to be a little worried. Don't get too much more rain there. It's already heavy. And there's a bit of a deluge forecast overnight. So that could be really testing. And Stratford as well, I'll be keeping my eye on that soft ground with the prospect of, I've just looked at the weather now, substantial rain, thunder and lightning en route. So yeah, it's still jump season, Joe. We can't be thinking about Royal Ascot and picnics and sun and all that kind of nonsense yet.
And Stephen, for you, I mean, yeah, Ed kind of touched on it there, the ground being so heavy at the moment. I mean, does that kind of put you off some of the flat races, or is it actually something you can take advantage of?
Well, it does complicate matters. I mean, especially over jumps, as Ed said. Usually this time of year, we're getting towards Aintree in a couple of weeks. You're expecting it to be sort of good to soft ground, but things are really testing. We've had a wet in the south, especially. It's not stopped raining for the last 3 days here. With regard to Ascot on Sunday, that's going to be really testing. And obviously the flat starts, Doncaster, traditionally a really competitive card. Suddenly all the trainers want to run their horses. We're going to have probably nearly heavy ground, so it's something to bear in mind. I will say, Joe, that I think it's a time, especially on the flat, for watching mainly very small stakes. It's not punter friendly, these sort of meetings. Huge fields. There's liable to be some track bias, I'd have thought, at Doncaster. There nearly always is, and nobody knows what it's going to be until we've seen a race or two. And as you say, fitness will count for plenty in what's going to be really deep ground.
Well, speaking of a trappy or big field, the first tip we're going to look at, or the first race we're going to look at, is at Doncaster. So we're going to start off with our experts' long shots, then get to their value picks, and then their best bets of the weekend. So, Stephen, I'll start with you and your long shot of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 22-runner handicap, the Spring Mile, a cracking race. I mean, I think I will say, if you're going to play each way, extra places, there's bound to be bookmakers wanting to give away 5 or 6 places. And I really like last year's winner, Arthur's Realm. The big positive for him is he's had a spin on the all-weather, which I think would have been to put him spot on for this race. His marks slipped back a few pounds after rather losing his way a touch at the end of last season. But he won this race last season on soft ground, and there was a wholesale late gamble. He was sort of 12 or 14 to 1 for most of the morning. I think he ended up 15 to 2, putting on at the finish. And if you watch the run back, I watched it back this morning because I knew I was going to be talking about him. He actually pulled very hard for half of that race, and he did amazingly well to see things out. He's run 3 times at Doncaster in his career. He won this race last year, as I've said. He finished 3rd of 16 on really testing ground in September 2022, and actually on his racecourse debut, he finished a very promising knocked about 5th over the straight mile here a couple of years ago. So Doncaster clearly suits him. He's got plenty of soft and heavy ground form. He's had a sighter. Obviously, this mark demands a little bit more than last year, but everything's in place for a big run. Oyster knows him really well. Each way, 6 places. I'll be really disappointed if he's out the 6 with any luck in running. He is drawn, we talk about the draw, he's drawn 22 of 22. So hopefully there'll be high numbers will be favoured. We don't know, but if there is a bias, he could be in the right place to find out if that is the case.
Well, it leads me nicely on to Ed's long shot because you're going to the other side of the stool. So, yeah, you're going to draw one.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, long shot in inverted commas. I think there's a bit of 9 to 1 floating around at the time of recording. But Isla Kai, and similar kind of logic to Stephen in the sense that recent form figures aren't necessarily inspiring, but has dropped down the weights as a consequence of that. But absolutely loves it on Town Moor. Isla Kai's had 3 starts over course of distance, form figures reading first, and fourth. And that fourth coming on real unsuitable ground in a really hot race on fast ground. So I'm not too worried about that. I think it was still a good run in defeat. And I mentioned the ground as well. Soft ground's going to be no problem for this individual who's got 4 career wins. And I think the word soft's been in the go description on all 4. And I think we even been soft to heavy on 2 of those occasions. So no issue with ground. Loves the track. He, yes, has the burden top weight, but was running off marks in the hundreds this time last season. So, yes, winless last year, but the handicapper has reacted. I take Stephen's points on board. The draw is an unknown. That's something I could never get my head around on the flat, especially at Royal Ascot. Just as everyone thinks they've worked out this mythical draw track bias, it seems to swing around the other way, depending on which race you're running. And in regards to Ida Car as well, I touched upon it at the top of the show. 176 days off the track. Will he be revved up on return? Given his liking for soft ground and Doncaster, I'd imagine they probably targeted him at this race. I'd be shocked if he was coming here half cooked, given how well he's run it this track in the past. So yeah, I thought it was again 6-7 places in the mix, 8-1. Yeah, Isla Kai, a small each way play for myself.
Well, it leads me nicely on then to the feature on Irish Racing I'm bringing up now. So the draw analysis you can see here at Doncaster, over a mile. So still 1, expected wins and actual wins. Not looking too good for your pick there, Ed. But so yeah, below expectation. But obviously the horse can defy the stats. But anyway, let's move on to the value angle. So Stephen, take us through your selection for the weekend, please.
Yeah, this is in the big betting race of the weekend, the William Hill Lincoln, 3:35 at Doncaster. Not very original again, a while of Simon and Ed Crisford. Well, Simon and Ed Crisford really are a team to follow. They've got some lovely young horses, and this one is completely unexposed. He ran 4 times last year, twice on the all-weather, twice on turf. The first time he got really testing ground was on his final run into handicaps at Redcar. He was smashed up in the market, and he won really impressively, I thought, by 3 3/4 lengths, having travelled really strongly on the bridle. So testing ground is no issue at all. I think he's now £9 higher, but I don't think that'll be a problem. I think he's probably a graded performer in the making. The one thing could count against him is inexperience in this huge field. Obviously, this race can be quite rough, but he's drawn very high, which I'm hoping will be an advantage. They're liable to split. The ground's no problem. The right money's been around. I speak to somebody in a trading room in Malta, and they laid him at double figures as soon as the prices went up to the right sort of people. I think he's sort of 6 or 7 to 1 on the exchanges. I think he's probably more of a win-only horse, which is a funny thing to say in a huge field handicap, but his inexperience may be a negative for him. He might just be a lot better than this mark, or he might blow out altogether. So I'm going to stick with a while. Obviously, it's a wide open, valuable handicap. I do think there'll be plenty of these who probably will definitely need the run in the conditions, and they're just using it as a starting point. So although it is probably 5, 6, 7 to 1 the field, maybe a lot of the rags, sort of 33 and upwards, are going to be very hard to fancy.
Yeah, so I guess some negatives potentially about the others there. I mean, how about the favourite, Stephen? Any thoughts on this one?
Well, Almabeer, he's been well back. So William Haggis got an amazing record in this race, and he's already flying. William Haggis' last 6 runners, which have obviously been on the all-weather, he's had 4 winners. So this one will be very fit, very primed. At Zany's booked. I just thought he was slightly more exposed. He's run 6 times. He did win on heavy ground at Haydock in October, so the conditions have come right. I just think that Awal might improve past him.
Fair enough. And moving on then to Ed and your value pick for the weekend.
Yeah, indeed. Switching codes here. I'm going to sunny Stratford for my next selection. Samuel Spade for the Ben Paulding team. The opening race on the card there on Saturday is novice hurdle. It's a good little contest, actually. It's a decent card for Stratford at the end of March. Samuel Spade was a horse who has had a pretty good season, like most of the Ben Paulding team have. Of course, this horse has notched up a couple of wins. He's been in really good form. And then it was just a little bit too much, I think, last time out. Ran in the Boodles at the Cheltenham Festival, was a bit keen. Showed up for a long way just before tiring in the closing stages. But this is chalk and cheese, going from the Cheltenham Festival to a novice hurdle at Stratford into much calmer waters here today. And so this horse has got some very good form. Including Huntingdon in the novice hurdle where bolting up, was runner-up in the Chatteris Fen, so a good horse, Gary Moore's, when trying to concede plenty of weight, and won on soft ground at Kempton before that. So I think conditions will be fine. Ease is a grade and class here, and is still unexposed and open to improvement. So I thought, all in all, I thought with the Ben Paulding team having a great season, this horse versatile ground-wise. I've done the tissue for this race. I'd imagine it'd be somewhere in around the 4-1 mark, maybe 9-2, something like that. I think that's fair cop. I mean, the Jupiter de Gite is the absolute joker in the pack here, quite literally. I mean, this horse, I don't think anyone knows what to expect. Pulled up in the Triumph Hurdle when last seen. If you remember rightly, the race was delayed because went absolutely bonkers beforehand. Took forever to get him to line up, and then shot the bolt, went off like patash in a 5 furlong sprint, and then pulled up. Before that, he was pretty solid in the market to win the Triumph Hurdle trial. Was tailed off, but then on his stable and hurdling debut, of course, with a hood on for the first time at Newbury on soft ground, he was a 66-1 winner. When downing that good horse of Nicky Henderson's, or the horse of Nicky Henderson's who was 4s on the day, jet powered, caused a mighty upset. So I don't think anyone really knows what to expect with that horse. It's going to be interesting. It's a tricky race to price up, I've got to be honest with you. But Samuel Spade for me, I think is the solid one.
Yeah, I mean, how it does actually going to bring up the Boodles as well. I mean, how much do you think it will be affected by that run, or is it just it was a bit too tough that day and it should improve now?
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways looking at it. You can say, well, he's had a hard race just over 2 weeks ago. But if anything, it probably would have done him a bit of good, if you see what I'm saying. I mean, he only had the 4 starts for the season. It's not like a horse they've really gone to the bottom of the well with over hurdles, And the penultimate run at Huntingdon, he basically jogged around in a nothing race at 1-7. Came home on the bridle. He would have done harder bits of work on the gallops, I think, than that. So it's not like he's an individual who's been hammer and tongs since the end of September over hurdles, and you wonder whether the old petrolite's coming on, which is something we spoke about last week's show. This funny time of year, some of these horses have just had enough. But I think he's a fresh enough novice, shall we say, that if anything, that might have just toughened him up a little bit, and it probably would have done him some good, that experience. So fascinating race. Nicky Henson's got an interesting type in here, and Bo Balco has won 2 of his last 3 for the Paul Nicholls team are flying. But I thought Samuel Spade could be the value pick here, and I should say should find this much easier.
Good stuff. And moving on then to Stephen's nap of the weekend.
Yeah, and this is another race at Doncaster in the 3 o'clock. I really like Michael Dodds' Comanche Falls here. Now, he's a fantastic advert for Michael Dodds. He's one of those horses who sort of runs every other Saturday during the summer. He's won the Stewards' Cup at Goodwood for the last 2 years. He won it on fast ground last year and soft ground the year before. He's actually one of those horses, I think Michael Dodds thinks he probably wants sort of good to soft ground, but every time he's run on soft or heavy, he's either run well in defeat or won. He's got a good record at Doncaster. He's run twice with credit here. His final run last season, he ran really well, but maybe it was one run too many. He finished 5th in a big field handicap over this course and distance. He's been primed for his return. I think he's around 5-1. He's drawn 8, probably won't matter, only 12 runners, but he's drawn on the higher side again. And I think he's bound to give his running and go really well. Michael Dodds, we obviously don't know. Michael Dodds doesn't run that many on the all-weather. He has the odd one at Newcastle, but I would imagine he'll be fit. This is a very valuable prize, and Comanche Falls has got a terrific record fresh. He always goes best off a short break. He's running here for the first time since November, so it's 4 months or so. That shouldn't be any issue. Connor Beasley knows him really well. Heavy ground will really suit him. I thought the danger was probably the top one, Asjad. James Horton's a really good young trainer going places. This 5-year-old, he's booked Danny Tudhope. He's 5 from 12. He's still improving for a sprinter, and I think he might be the danger. Again, he's liable to be fit, and there should be some more improvement to come. Soft ground, no problem. But Comanche Falls, he's tough, battle-hardened. I think he's won nearly 300 grand's worth of prize money. As I say, he's 6 wins from 29, which is a brilliant return for a sprinter who's running in these top Saturday handicaps or listed races for the last few years. And I think he's bound to go really close.
Excellent. And any word on the favourite as well? So you got Al Caballo here.
El Cabala, yeah, Carl Burke. Well, Carl Burke's a really good trainer. I know Ed really rates him as well. He had a good season last season. His form's mostly on the all weather, and I would have a big question mark about testing ground. He won at Carlisle in his early days, but his improvements come either on the all weather or on fast turf. So just a slight question mark about him on heavy ground. It's going to be pretty deep at Doncaster.
I like his other runner. Yeah.
Which one do you like, Ed, in here?
Yeah, I was going to say Fast Response, the other Carl Burke course
Yeah.
in here is, interested here, the jockey bookings and everything. But this filly, she just took off on heavy ground last year. Seemed to really bring about more improvement. She went through the ranks, 85 rated handicapper, won a listed race over course of distance in an absolute swamp when last seen in November. And I don't know, maybe just everything's falling in her place. I was a little bit mystified as to why she was 10-1, or rather surprised she was 10-1. She's got everything in her favour here for a big run, I thought. Again, first run for 147 days, etc., etc. But a fast response each way for me there, Stephen. Going to take you on in that one.
I mean, actually, Ed touched on a good point there, Joe. That the markets at this stage of the season on the flat, unless you absolutely know directly from someone at a stable or who owns a horse, the late market moves, it's basically like playing poker, where the people who know what's what declare their positions and put their cards on the table very late in the last 2 minutes or so of betting on these races. I mean, we've got a favourite here, El Cabala. The firms have priced up the race. There's literally no money at all on the exchanges, and that's what they're going off. There's no great thought gone into it. El Cabalo's 9-4. He could be 5 or 6-1. By the same token, he could be 13-8. Stable nap. They all want to be on. He's fit, and the other one isn't. So the markets on the flat, the late markets. Forget about when you see in the morning people say this is 6 into 9-2. It's an irrelevance. It's just as liable to be a smokescreen for a few coins. Nobody plays early in the mornings anymore. The real money shifts in the last 3 minutes. So you'll find out a lot of the time on the flat, especially, you half know you're right or wrong before the race jumps off. If you've taken 6, something that's now 14, you know you're wrong. By the same token, if you've taken 6 and it's 11-4 putting on, you know you're right. You might not draw, but you know you've done things right. So small stakes for me at this stage of the season. I think there's a lot of very shrewd people who know more than people who just watch the racing when it's first time out.
That's a very good advice there, Stephen. Thank you for that. And we'll move on, Ed. I think we've got your nap to round us off as well.
Yep, going to the deep ground at Uttoxeter for the 355. Now, Ollie Murphy is absolutely flying. The Yard are in unbelievable form at the moment, and they had a 4-timer on a card last week. I can't remember where it was. At one stage, they'd had 7 winners of the last 8 runners. Everything just seems to be absolutely firing. He says himself he can't quite put his finger on it. He said he thought horses were supposed to improve for spring ground and the sun. He says it started raining and all the horses he thought wanted good ground suddenly started winning. So he says, what do trainers know? But it does make me laugh. All his horses, whatever reason, have just really clicked. They're in rude health. And I did think this Lord of Kerak in the 355, Sean Bowen on board again, another jockey riding out of his skin. These had 9 winners in the last fortnight. It's an exposed chaser who, how should we say, learnt a lot from his experience on debut at Chepstow in a pretty tough race by Mogbeg Genius. Obviously, that horse went on to be placed at Cheltenham Festival, so I think that was a bit of a learning curve. But then stepped up massively last time out at Wetherby, finished runner-up to Famous Bridge, a decent horse in Nicky Richards' team. Jumped beautifully, led for most of the race, made a bit of an annoying error 2 out and weakened. As I say, that was over 3 miles plus on soft ground. I just wonder, coming back to 2.5 on deep ground. In fact, the horse's sole win over hurdles came at this trip on soft ground. I just think this drop backing trip, where if he could bowl along in front and utilise that really good jumping, it could turn the screw on a few of these. So I thought Lord of Kerak of 121 for a Yard that really are at the peak of their powers. I thought was ticking all the right boxes in a 5-runner affair where I don't think it's particularly deep either.
Yeah, I think it kind of sums up what Stephen was talking about here as well. So you've got the market mover. So yeah, Ed, you would have been right here with the market going the way as well. It's from 7-1 into 130. So let's see what the prices will be. What kind of a price you anticipate Lord of Kerak to be?
I mean, he's going to be fairly short, I would imagine. I thought well, again, it depends. The Murphy gamble, if they're in good form, then it could go off really short. But I thought 7-4, that kind of ballpark, 13-8. He's there or thereabouts. I mean, the Dan Skelton horse, Real Stone, has to be respected. Obviously, he's got soft ground winning form as well. But I just thought Lord of Carac jumped beautifully last time out, as you say, was backed in the market, was expected to deliver. Had a bit of a hash of one fence, which was ironic given how well he jumped to that point, and then weakened out of it on very deep ground over a much longer trip. So his sole win in a very short career came back at this intermediate distance. So I just think there's this half mile shorter, turn the screw from the front. Sean Bowen, as I say, really riding full of confidence at the moment. And Lord of Carac for me, if you could get 7-4, I think that is perfectly fair.
Lovely stuff. All right, that wraps it up for kind of in-depth analysis. Stephen, can you just sum up your tips for the weekend, please?
Yep, looking for all high-drawn horses at Doncaster. So we might soon know our fate if we get it wrong in the first race. You must watch the Brocklesby, actually. That's
God.
a race to watch, definitely, because you'll probably get a big clue about the draw apart from anything else, but hopefully it'll be a level playing field. My long shot, starting off with that in the 225, Arthur's Realm, won the Spring Mile last year, been trained for the race, had a pipe opener on the all-weather, deep ground fine, must run well. The value angles in the 335, the Lincoln, Arwell has attracted the right money over the last few weeks. One run on deep ground, really impressive last season. Has got a new mark to defy, but I think he's working really well at home. He's fit and fancy. They think he's going to be a listed or graded performer in time. So hopefully he might be able to outclass this lot from a very high draw. And then Nap, the betting expert, naps in the 3 o'clock. A good old sort, Comanche Falls and Michael Dodds. Optimum conditions, soft ground at Doncaster, 6 furlongs. Absolutely ideal. Great record, fresh, battle hardened, big handicap winners on Saturday for the last few years. I think he's bound to run well. And if it comes down to a scrap in the final furlong, he'll be finding plenty more under Connor Beasley.
Lovely stuff. Well, best of luck to you, Stephen. And Ed, can you also just sum up your tips as well?
Yeah, indeed. The long shots, Isla Kai will be my pick there in the Spring Mile. I think we'll go our loves. Doncaster will have no problem with the ground. So I thought was finding that individual hard to boot out the frame. Samuel Spade be my selection in that event at Stratford. The opening race, the novice hurdle here, ran at the Cheltenham Festival last time out. That was a bridge too far in the calmer waters. I thought could go well for Yard, who've had a cracking season. And then my nap, Lord of Carac. Ollie Murphy, probably the most informed trainer on planet Earth at the moment. The Yard are flying, ground will be fine, and I think coming back to 2.5 miles is a huge boost for this horse. But I'm going to take Stephen on in the Camage Trophy as well in the 3 o'clock. I'm looking forward to that race. But Fast Response, absolute mudlark that filly. I am surprised she's 10-1. But as Stephen says, your markets. Just before the off will be far more revealing than my waffle now, because if she needs the run, she'll be 38s on the machine, won't she? So we shall find out. But everything, not knowing fitness taken on trust, everything is in place for a big run from Fast Response.
Well, thanks for those tips, Ed. And that wraps it up for today's edition of Formscan. So thank you for watching. Comment below as well with your selections of the week. And also let us know what you think of our experts' picks. It'd be interesting to get your thoughts. Subscribe for more content from irishracing.com and we'll be back soon. So thanks a lot for watching and always gamble safely.